Today, you and I are going to uncover why people who want success rarely get it, and how you can get more in alignment with the universe to actually achieve the results that you desire and deserve. This is an important topic. Have you ever felt like you're working harder, you are striving for more, but things are never falling into place? I was talking to somebody the other day and they said no matter how hard they try, things don't seem to work out. And I said, that's the problem. You're working too hard. You have an association in your subjective mind that says better results equals more time, more effort. And it's not necessarily so. There's an effortless way. And that's the way that you and I are going to talk about today. Because success, it's not about working harder. It's about aligning you and yourself with something much greater than you. Like my good friend and mentor, Bob Proctor, always said, when you align yourself with God, the universe, whatever you choose to call it, you'll always be in the majority. That means the power you're aligning yourself with is so much greater than the relatively small, minuscule intellect that we're equipped with. So that's how quantum leaps are created. It's about you aligning yourself with a lawful process. And so today we're going to dig into the concept of flow and alignment and how you can become more aligned as a person. You're going to uncover the law of rhythm. We're going to dig into the perpetual transmutation of energy and the law of vibration together, because they're crucial to understand for you to achieve more and get more in a faster, effortless way. So what does that whole process of alignment really mean? Maybe it's the first time you hear it, because there are so many misconceptions around that concept, and let's overcome them first before we dig deeper. Because the fact is that the associations you create to words gives you the meaning. And if from the get-go, your association is something that is not going to serve you, it might make sense to change those associations just a little bit. There's a common myth about alignment, and it doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. It's not like, oh, I'm in alignment now, so I don't have to do anything. We hear that often in our community. I set the goals, so in the process, I don't have to do anything. Well, that's not entirely true, but the doing is not this contrived, forced way of doing things anymore. That's what we're going to release the idea of. And the universe will not do it for you either. It's said that the universe will feed every bird, but it will not put food in their nests. So you got to get out and you got to get things moving. But there's a specific way to do things that are in alignment, and that is the state that I wish for you. The times in my life where my life and my business and everything in it has quantum leaped the most has been when I was in flow, in alignment, and that's the state I strive to be in most of the time. Actually, strive is the wrong word, because with striving means it's something outside of us we're striving towards, and it really isn't. It's a process that you allow to unfold from within. So like I said, alignment, it's not in action either. It's inspired action. It's guided action by a higher side of your personality, I guess you can say. It's where you start to utilize your mental tools, especially your intuition, in a way that really serves you. So I remember a time when we were doing a lot in the business. We were doing real Magic Live events in the English market, in the Danish market. We were doing virtual challenges in both markets, and our Mind Magic Live events in both markets. It was a lot. And one day my team came to me and said, oh, by the way, we have a real Magic Live coming up here in about a month and a half. And we signed a contract with the hotel last year when we believed we could fill this place with 300 seats, and we're committing to those 300 seats whether we get them sold or not. I'm like, And the team asked, what should we do to get this room filled? And that's when it hit me. I was in Costa Rica at the time at a retreat center, and the first thought that came to me is, we're not going to do anything. Actually, we're going to be something different, and then the doing will come as a secondary effect. And it did. So I brought myself in alignment with the idea that this room was already full. So utilizing the concepts that I'm going to go through with you today enabled me to live from that place, download ideas from that frequency, and then the action came as a secondary effect. And the action, it wasn't hard work. It wasn't running faster at all. It was actually pretty simple for us to execute on. But I downloaded some ideas from the frequency that this room was already full, integrated the ideas, and in like a short amount of time, in like 2-3 weeks, we had sold like 250 more tickets. it wasn't because we did more. We actually did less. We were more from an energetic perspective, and we did even less on a physical plane. So that's what this is about. Alignment is a buzzword out there. Oh, I need to get an alignment. You can intellectually understand it, but it has to become an experience. You can actually never understand it properly. You can grasp it, maybe, or grasp aspects of it intellectually, but you won't really know it until you do it. Does that make sense? So what does alignment feel like? It feels like ease, flow. It feels like you're in a state of higher creativity. You experience synchronicities happening all around you. You see these things falling into place, and there's patterns. You start to see those patterns in your environment, and you start to experience these unexpected opportunities that start showing up from seemingly nowhere. Where did they come from? They came from no thing, energy that just transmuted into physical, and we'll talk more about the laws in a minute. But that's how alignment feels. When you are not in alignment, it feels hard. When you're not in alignment, you're focused on the physical result or what isn't there. When you're not in alignment, you may be emotionally out of whack. What does that mean? That means you are fearful, you're frustrated, you are resentful. Those are some signs that you're definitely not in alignment. Wallace Wattles put it so beautifully. He said the entire process of mental and adjustment and atonement can be summed up in one word, and that's gratitude. So that emotional shift towards gratitude literally hooks you up to your source of supply, to where everything comes from. And so what we really have to do is to disassociate more from the physical. So I want you to look at your life right now and recognize that things are the way they are because you have been thinking a certain way up until now. It's neither good or bad, except your thinking makes it so. It just is. But you have to disassociate physical fact and the truth. So physical fact on the physical plane might not be to your liking at all, but you're not letting it control you anymore. The fact is, you can choose your state. You can choose a higher alignment right now. Two different set of rules, two different ways of living. So we have to let go of something that controls you of a lower nature in order for you to receive something of a higher. So what does that mean? For me, when I was sitting in our one-bedroom apartment in Las Vegas and I had an eviction notice on my door, a blood test that said I was really sick, it was physical facts. I wasn't neglecting that. I wasn't saying that that isn't so. I recognized it, but it didn't control me any longer. I let go of that in favor of a new idea. And the new idea was complete health and wealth, the idea of working with the best in the world in personal development. Those were the higher ideals that started to occupy my mind. So now I started working from a higher to the lower. My life up until then was preoccupied by living from a lower to a higher. It might be in your life too right now. You may have had a tendency to look at everything physical. Well, the first step to get more in alignment with what you want is to disassociate from the physical. You're not saying it isn't what it is. It is, you recognize it, but what is your predominant thought pattern and emotional pattern now is of a higher vibration. It's a higher ideal. That's so important, and that comes back to subjective control. You have to learn how to control yourself subjectively. A piece of literature I've studied now for a few weeks is called Subjective Control. It's by Neville Goddard, and he said here, each day set yourself the task of deliberately withdrawing your attention from the objective world and focusing it subjectively. In other words, concentrate on those thoughts or moods which you deliberately determine. Then those things that now restrict you will fade and drop away. The day you achieve control of the movements of your attention in the subjective world, you are master of your fate. Those are big words. The day that you achieve control of the movements of your attention in the subjective world, you are master of your fate. So why don't more people do it? Well, they don't because they have no idea how their mind works. And the first step is to understand how their mind works and then disassociate, then start controlling the subjective state much more. Now, that becomes the primary factor in your life. The world out there becomes the secondary. And that is the first step to bringing more alignment and success into your life. So let's talk about the universal laws for a minute and how they really make your success absolutely guaranteed. So you can say that these laws are God's modus operandi. It's how the whole thing around us is run. The one thing we're part of as well. It's how the universe corresponds with itself. And there's patterns and there's laws. And there's 7 primary laws. Today we're digging into 3 of them. But it's about embracing the fact that there is a certain way that things comes into being. on the physical plane. You can fight these laws, and that's what people do subjectively by the way of their own ignorance. They're actually fighting them. They're in states that doesn't serve them. They're frustrated, they're angry, they're resisting what is. And of course, the more you resist things, the more they persist. Right? So we're actually programmed to violate the laws, to work against the laws. The more we understand these laws and bring our mind and thinking and being into harmony with them, the better your results will be, and it will be effortless. So if you find yourself right now sitting in a pit feeling like it's pretty bad, then congratulations, there's a law called the law of rhythm that decrees that there's a biorhythm in everything, in nature and in you and I. So if you're at a low point, the upswing must come. It's just a matter of time. So adjust your attitude. Start expecting better, and better will be around the corner. I usually make the reference to the stock market. When there's a low point, all the amateurs, they start selling because they freak out. All the professionals, they start buying because they know it's just a matter of time before the upswing comes. They've seen it often enough, so they know there's a pattern to it. But do you recognize the same pattern in your life? Most people don't. So the law of rhythm is so important. There were some German scientists back in the 50s, I think, that came up with the theory of the law of biorhythms in us. So we have biorhythms intellectually. There's days where you feel really sharp. There are days where you are emotionally just dialed in, and there are days where you just feel on it. But the opposite also holds true. There are days when you don't feel on top of things mentally. There are days where you're completely out of whack emotionally, and there's days where your physical just needs rest. And so when you recognize those patterns, you can stop fighting them. You can release and let go and embrace the upswing when it comes. It's very important. Most people fight the downswing. Embrace it, recognize it, and adjust your mental attitude towards the upswing that must arrive. All right? So that's the first one, the law of rhythm. The next one is the perpetual transmutation of energy. And that's a bit of a mouthful, but that law decrees that energy is forever moving into physical form, through the physical form, and back into physical. So there's a never-ending perpetual transmutation that takes place with and through us, with and through everything in nature too. A tree is a beautiful example of that. In our Real Magic seminars, I have a money tree on stage that grows actually pretty fast, and all of a sudden, the whole cycle starts from the beginning. It's the same in nature, right? And it's the same with you and I. Where did the flowers come from? Where did the leaves come from? No thing. It transmuted into physical form with and through that tree, and back into no physical, back into physical. So that really gives us the law of life. Nothing born or ever dies. We just continue this cycle of life. When you start seeing yourself more as a terminal as opposed to a sender or receiver, things really starts to change, because you recognize that you're just an expression of an infinite power that expresses itself beautifully, perfectly with and through you. So your job on a mental level is to align yourself with that law and realize that everything is already here. That's the key. By understanding this principle, you don't get anything. You just become aware of what you already have. Creation is finished. And so when you go to a place in your mind of what you really want, it's done. The creation of that thing is done. What you're doing now is holding on to that idea on an intellectual level first, then on a subjective emotional level, and then your body starts expressing that idea. In other words, you start executing on the idea. You start taking action. But most people that don't take action on their goals and ideas, they don't have the first two steps down here. They think it's all about physical action. Well, guess what? If you're in a fearful, resentful state while taking action, it won't work. You're repelling that idea more than anything, because you're not in a very constructive frequency. So your job is to think the thing first, feel the thing second, and then you will find your body moving into action in expressing that thing. And you can literally shock yourself with how precise you can do this. I remember back when we lived in Las Vegas, and I had this goal of driving my dream car, and I was driving a beat up old Honda, and I was mentally though and emotionally I was driving my dream Tesla. I was driving a Tesla S model, and I had designed it mentally. It was wide on the outside, wide on the inside. It had 21-inch rims and an open sunroof. I've been driving that car for years, and I went to Tesla and I test drove an S model many times so I could experience what it felt like driving that car. And so on my birthday, February 1st, I called up Tesla and I said, I'm going to give myself that car as a birthday present to myself. And it has to be wide on the outside, wide on the inside, 21-inch rims and an open sunroof. And they went, we don't make that. And I said, what? You can't say that. I've been living in that frequency for so long. I didn't tell him that, but I told myself, I've been there so long in that frequency. What do you mean you don't make it? That can't be. It was like telling me that the sky is green or something. That's completely out of whack. He calls me back a few minutes later and he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Hansen, we made a mistake. Tesla made one mistake in 19. They made a white Tesla S model. They made it white on the outside, white on the inside, white seats, It has 21-inch turbine wheels and rims, and it has an open sunroof. There was one person that ordered it. They didn't want it anyways. It's in San Francisco. It's brand new. It can be in Las Vegas in 3 days. And I went, that's mine. What are the odds that one Tesla person made a mistake and had that one produced exactly to my specification? That wasn't a mistake at all. It was just the perpetual transmutation of energy in action. Same in your life. What are you actually transmuting into form? And doing it this way, you're always in the majority because you're working with a power that will affect everything, other people's minds, if that's required, to help you get to where you want to go. And when you do it lawfully and you do it for everybody's increase, for everybody that's involved, you're doing it the right way. You can get this down so precisely that you shock yourself often. And that's my goal for you. All right. So the perpetual transmutation decrees that energy just moves into form. The energy that's already here. In other words, the way we landed the rocket recently, Elon Musk landed that rocket, that way was always here. He just became aware of how to do it. Same with you. What are you becoming aware of on a daily basis? Are you actually committing to your own growth, or are you just mildly interested? Are you just listening to my voice here, or are you actually implementing these things? By implementing them, you will find that energy transmutes with and through you in a very orderly way towards what you really would love in your life. All right. And the last law that we're going to dig into today is the law of vibration. And that's a very important aspect of this as well. That law decrees that everything vibrates at a certain frequency. So these laws go together, as you can see. You can't separate them. When you work with one, you work with the other. It's like colors in a rainbow. You can't really separate them. But everything vibrates, nothing rests. It's just at a different rate of vibration. That's what we call different things. And you can actually change your frequency. You can change the rate of vibration within you to align with what you want, so that you on a physical level also attract more of what you desire into your life. So the important thing here is to check in on your state. The word feeling is probably the word that is closest tied with that concept, because the word feeling is a word we use to describe our awareness of the frequency that we're in. So you can check in with yourself often and say, how do I actually feel? Do I feel aligned? Do I feel grateful? Do I feel abundant? Do I feel joyful? Because you should. Regardless of what's going on outside, you should feel a certain way. You should feel very grateful for the goal that's already here, that's transmuting into physical form right this minute with and through you. Very grateful. And that state is probably the most powerful state you can ever be in. Be grateful in advance for what's on its way. This is important. You have to write it out in hand. So this morning, like I always do, I'm on day 2,216 in a row, and I've been writing down in hand what I'm very grateful for. 5 things usually that are in my life, and 5 things that are on their way that have to do with my goal. So now what I call future pacing my gratitude. I'm grateful for what is, and I'm grateful for what's on its way. That's a powerful state. Now you're vibrating at a frequency that matches the ideal outcome for you. So you don't create anything, like I said before. You just manifest on the physical what is in correspondence with what is already here on a mental level. Does that resonate at all? I know it's a big idea. It was for me. So you don't create anything. You merely manifest on the physical plane what is in correspondence with what is already here on a mental plane. You're just transmuting the mental idea to the physical. But because you're so earthbound, because you and I have been programmed to live through our senses, we look to the physical to see if it's here. That's a mistake. That's why most people are stuck. That's why so many people struggle. They're on the struggle bus, and they willingly sit down on the struggle bus every day. Could they take the prosperity jet? Of course they could. Why don't they do it? They don't know. They don't know. They're ignorant incompetence. For the majority of my life, I was an ignorant incompetent. I didn't know. Then I started becoming aware that I didn't know. Now you can start changing something. Now you become a conscious competent. That's a much more prosperous place to be. Happy health and wealth belongs to the people who are at least conscious incompetence. They know they don't know it all, and they start making the necessary changes. All right. So how do you really dig into this? Well, like I said, you got to practice your emotional state. You got to practice your will on a mental plane and your imagination. Imagination takes you where you've never been. And in this text, it says here in the end, having achieved control of the movements of your attention and having discovered the mystery hid from the ages that Christ or the creator in you is your imagination, you will assert the supremacy of imagination and put all things in subjection to it. That's a beautiful thing. You are a creative being. You are created in the creator's image. That means you're here to create. Create what? Create a better, healthier, happier, and wealthier life for yourself and everybody around you. That's why you're here. So we got to start with the awareness of that. And we're going to start by aligning our conscious mind to that idea. And so we can do that through meditation. There's a lot of great meditations on my channel here you can make use of. We have an entire playlist. In fact, there's one in particular I would recommend you use, and that is the abundance abundance meditation, then start writing down your gratitude, or just at a minimum, observe how you feel and do what you can to change your feeling state as soon as you can. And then clear the resistance. Get rid of everything that is pulling you in the opposite direction. There's a law of sacrifice, I guess you can call it, the law of release. I don't like to call it the law of sacrifice because that implies that you're giving away something valuable, when in fact, sacrifice is letting go of something of a lower nature so that you can embrace and receive something of a higher. So that's why let's just call it the law of release. There might be people in your life, there might be conditions, circumstances, clutter in your home that you need to get rid of now before you can embrace that higher frequency. You see, you cannot focus on saving and getting more for less while being in a prosperous vibration. That is two completely different frequencies. You can't do that. Nothing repels me more than a person who is tight. One thing is not having a lot. I didn't have a lot for the majority of my life. But another thing is to hold back when you have an opportunity to give. Some of the richest people are the people that may not have a whole lot in the account, but they're good givers. And because they're good givers, they get a lot, maybe on other planes. But that's the first step, is embrace a prosperity mindset. And by giving more, by becoming more, and also by releasing conditions and circumstances and people out of your life that is no longer in harmony with that idea. And so it takes a lot of self-recognition and respectable amount of introspection. It's not easy. It's simple. It's not easy. And of course, take inspired action. That's one of the things I would encourage you to do as well. But that is not something you can do as a primary thing. This is so vital. Inspired action is an effect. The main cause is you getting in harmony with an idea, because then you can't help but take action. People that procrastinate, that don't execute, that's not the problem. They have an alignment problem. They don't have an execution problem. See, if they were in alignment, the execution would follow naturally. I know that happened to you many times, where an idea would hit your mind, you would get emotionally involved, and you just couldn't help but act. It felt great. You had to get up and you had to get moving. You had to call them, you had to put down the deposit, you were so excited. You know those times. Nobody had to convince you to act. You couldn't help but act. That's inspired action. Inspired, in spirit, one with the creative flow that flows to and through you, one with the idea of perpetual transmutation of energy. What? Can you see how these things align now for you? Inspired action, in spirit, one with the creative flow that flows to and through you. Where did the idea come from? Pure energy. You got emotion involved in it. Now you acted. That's aligned action. So if you're doubting whether or not you take aligned action, you're probably not. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I really hope it does. If this is the only thing that you receive out of this video today, please let it be that. I remember when I had set a goal of working with the best in the world in personal development. I mentioned that before. I was living in a one-bedroom apartment. Like I said, nothing worked. But here I was, vibrating at the frequency of being on stage with the best in the world. That was a far cry and a far stretch from where I was. But I primed myself every day, all day with that idea. What did I do? I connected with a completely different frequency that was foreign to my 5 physical senses, completely foreign. Nobody could see what I saw. And I realized I had faith in the process. Faith is the ability to see the invisible, believe in the incredible, and that enables you to receive what the masses call impossible, which is another great quote from my good friend Bob. And so you have to recognize that alignment means that you spring into action as a secondary effect. And that's what happened to me. I was priming myself with the idea for months. Then New Year's Eve, my partner, Alejandro, was going to work. He said, I don't have to work. I'm going to work. We're going to be busy. And that didn't make any sense to me because he didn't like his work. So it caused me to think. And in that moment, my intuition, and this is the key here, intuition is a mental faculty that enables you to receive vibration from the universe and other people. And so in that moment, my intuition kicked in and told me to pick him up, but pick him up an hour early. That made even less sense. New Year's Eve, he worked at the Bellagio at the time in Las Vegas. It was busy, a lot of people. I decided to follow my intuition. I parked the car, walked around, and ran smack into Bob Proctor in a busy lobby in Bellagio. What are the odds? It couldn't have been any other way. My intuition prompted me to follow a certain path. And that's the same with you. When you connect with the idea, you're led from a higher place. It's said that when you pray, you're talking to God or the universe. When you're letting yourself be guided by your intuition, God or the universe talks to you. So when you connect with the idea, you will start getting impulses about where to go, what to do, who to call, and so on and so forth. That's how quantum leaps are created. You don't need to know the path, but you have to surrender and trust. In that moment, could I have let my intellect win and say, oh, it doesn't make any sense? Of course. Quantum leaps rarely make sense. So you have to surrender to that power and trust that the inputs and the guidance you're getting is what you're supposed to be following. And intuition never lies, never makes any mistakes. You can make mistakes, but the intuition never does. So another key point here is that you cannot get attached to the outcome. If you're attached to the outcome, you are standing or falling with outer circumstances. I'm living from my goal mentally every day, but I'm totally at peace with the idea that this fulfillment can take this lifetime or the next. I don't really care because I live a blissful life every day. So if the physical manifestation of my quantum leap goal takes a year, I'll be grateful. If it takes 5 years, I'll be grateful. If it takes 10 years, I'll be grateful. Or 50 years or another lifetime, I'll still be grateful. I'm willing to surrender this life that I'm living right now to the idea that is preoccupying my mind. And you should be able to say the same about your goal. Your goal needs to be so big and so beautiful that you're willing to sacrifice your life for it. And that's often misunderstood. People say, well, I'm not willing to kill myself for it. That's not what we're saying. But you're surrendering your life for what you're doing today and tomorrow and the next day. So make sure your goal is so big and so beautiful that you're willing to surrender at least the next 25 years of your life for it. That's when you know you have a good goal. And when it's that big and that beautiful, you will be guided by a higher power. That is for sure. So the importance of aligning with universal law cannot be overstated. You have to trust the flow and you have to allow yourself to think and feel at a higher vibration. That's when creativity starts to flourish. That's when ease starts to find its way to your life. And that's when your life in general feels like you're in flow. It's a beautiful thing. It's not faster. Like, we just wrapped up a year in our business here and we've had the best year we've ever had. I've never taken as much time off either. I'm going a whole month to India here in a few weeks. And we're doing great. Everything is great, but it's not because anyone is running faster. We're just operating at a higher frequency. And from that higher frequency comes more encompassing and more beautiful ideas. Thank you so much for watching this video. I have linked to a couple more right here that I think you would like. Now, until next time, it's not who you are that holds you back. It's all the illusions of who you think you're not. This is Hansen. Thank you.